In the vast inky blackness where stars like diamonds glittered on an endless cloth, swam the Xylar Patrol. Picture, if you will, a species of aquatic humanoids, their sleek, bioluminescent bodies perfectly adapted to the crushing pressures of their homeworld's deepest trenches. But don't be fooled by their graceful movements, these weren't gentle giants. The Xylar were obsessed with protocol, every ripple of their fins dictated by ancient regulations etched in shimmering coral tablets. Their society, a marvel of underwater, engineering ran with the ruthless efficiency of a well-oiled submersible. Every citizen had their designated task, their life meticulously planned from the moment their gills opened to the moment they returned their nutrients to the collective. Spontaneity was a disease, creativity a malfunction. Everything, and we mean everything, was about order. One standard cycle, while performing their designated patrol route near the Galactic rim, a patrol frigate, the Abyssal Vigilance, detected an anomaly. It wasn't a rogue asteroid nor a distress beacon from a known species, but something altogether different. The captain, a particularly stern Xylar named Krilsek 9, adjusted his bioluminescent crest in anticipation. "Report," he commanded, his voice a series of precisely calibrated clicks and whistles. "Object designated unknown entity 742 Alpha," responded the navigation officer, his own crest flashing a cool blue. "Appears to be of artificial origin, Captain. Drifting in Sector Gamma 9. Trajectory suggests randomness." Randomness. The why, very word sent shivers down Krilsek 9's spine, or whatever the Xylar equivalent of a spine was. It was an affront to everything they stood for. Protocol demanded investigation. The Abyssal Vigilance cautiously approached the object. It was small, metallic, and oddly shaped, nothing like the sleek utilitarian designs favored by the Xylar or any species they had encountered. As they drew closer, they activated their external floodlights, bathing the object in an eerie glow. It was an escape pod, and inside, nestled among strange, brightly colored fabrics, was a baby, a human baby. The Xylar had encountered various life forms, from sentient algae to hyper-aggressive space crustaceans, but never anything quite like this. This soft, fragile, utterly illogical creature defied all categorization. It was a biological anomaly, wrapped in a mystery, floating in the cold vacuum of space. And it was about to turn the Xylar's perfectly ordered world upside down. The discovery threw the Xylar into a state of unprecedented, discombobulation. Krilsek 9, his crest, flashing an agitated orange, barked orders. "Analysis. Immediate biological assessment. Determine threat level." The science team, usually a picture of aquatic composure, scurried to obey, their bioluminescent markings flickering with nervous energy. The baby, oblivious to the chaos it had unleashed, gurgled and waved its tiny fists. Its presence was an affront to Xylar science, a walking or rather floating contradiction to their meticulously constructed understanding of the universe. Every scan, every test, produced results that were nonsensical. Its internal organs were arranged in a haphazard fashion. Its skin was ridiculously soft, and its bone density, it barely registered on their scanners. "Inconclusive," sputtered the lead scientist, his tentacles twitching. "The subject's physiology defies all known parameters. Its cellular structure is unstable, its digestive system primitive. The Xylar were used to dealing with organisms that efficiently processed nutrients and expelled waste with minimal fuss. This thing seemed to require constant input and produced an alarming amount of byproducts. They attempted to categorize the baby using their standard taxonomic matrix, a complex system based on phylogenetic relationships, environmental adaptations, and potential for weaponization. The baby, of course, fit into none of the categories. It wasn't aquatic, it wasn't armored, and its only apparent weapon was its voice. A weapon, they would soon discover, of terrifying power. Initial attempts to understand the anomaly proved hilariously futile. They subjected it to sonic vibrations, hoping to trigger a recognizable response. The baby just stared blankly, then sneezed. They exposed it to various atmospheric pressures, attempting to simulate different planetary environments. The baby just drooled. They even tried feeding it a synthesized version of their standard nutrient paste, a highly efficient blend of algae, minerals, and protein. The baby responded by spitting it out with remarkable force, coating the science team in a fine green mist. The Xylar, it seemed, had met their match. The Xylar, ever pragmatic, decided that sustenance was the logical first step. Krilsek 9, after consulting the ancient scrolls of Xylar nutritional doctrine, a surprisingly thick volume, authorized the dispensing of nutrient paste Delta 7. It was the cornerstone of the Xylar diet, a greenish-brown sludge that provided all essential minerals and vitamins in a single, easily digestible bolus. A feeding drone, usually employed to nourish the delicate kelp forests of Xylos Prime, was repurposed for the task. It approached the baby with a gentle whir, extending a nozzle that dripped a generous dollop of the paste towards the infant's open mouth. The baby, however, had other ideas, its face scrunched up in an expression of utter disgust. The moment the paste touched its tongue, it erupted, not with a polite, contained rejection, but with a full-blown, ear-splitting wail. This was not the controlled, rhythmic vocalization the Xylar were accustomed to. This was chaos. A sonic barrage that resonated through the sterile corridors of the research facility, setting off alarms and causing minor tremors in the structural supports. Krilsek 9, his crest flashing a frantic red, clutched his auditory sensors. Silence. Deploy acoustic dampeners. Initiate emergency calming protocols. The science team, already frazzled by the baby's strange biology, scrambled to obey. They deployed sonic emitters that usually soothed agitated swarm larvae, but the baby only cried louder, its face turning an alarming shade of crimson. The crying was more than just an auditory annoyance. It was a disruption. It shattered the Xylar's meticulously planned schedules, throwing their rigid routines into disarray. The research team missed their designated nutrient paste break. The ROD sanitation crew failed to initiate the scheduled sterilization cycle. The entire facility teetered on the brink of procedural collapse. The Xylar, a species renowned for their unwavering discipline and logical approach to problem-solving, found themselves utterly baffled. How could such a small, seemingly insignificant creature cause so much pandemonium? They had faced down galactic warlords, navigated treacherous asteroid fields, and brokered peace treaties between warring nebulae. But this was a challenge of an entirely different order. The baby continued to cry, its tiny lungs seemingly inexhaustible. The Xylar, for the first time in their long and storied history, were at a loss. They stared at the wailing infant, a mixture of bewilderment, frustration, and a dawning sense of, well, something they couldn't quite define. It wasn't fear, exactly. More like existential dread. The dread of a perfectly ordered universe being unraveled by a single, demanding, and inexplicably loud human baby. Having failed to nourish the specimen, the Xylar turned to sanitation. Their logic, as ever, was impeccable. A clean specimen was a happy specimen, or at the very least, a less offensively odorous one. They decided a purification ritual was in order. This ritual, for the Xylar, involved a complex array of sonic resonators, hydrocleansers, and antibacterial gels, usually reserved for decontaminating captured enemy vessels. It was thorough, it was efficient, and as they were about to discover, it was spectacularly ill-suited for a human baby. The baby was placed in a specialized containment unit, normally used for neutralizing hazardous alien spores. A series of nozzles extended, spraying the infant with warm, purified water and a gentle, lavender-scented cleansing foam. The sonic resonators hummed to life, emitting low-frequency vibrations designed to dislodge any lingering contaminants. For a moment, the baby seemed intrigued. Its wide eyes followed the movement of the nozzles, its tiny hands reaching out to grasp at the swirling foam. And then, something remarkable happened. The baby giggled, not a polite, restrained chuckle, but a full-throated, joyous laugh. It splashed its hands in the water, kicking its tiny feet and sending droplets of purified H2O flying in all directions. The sound echoed through the chamber, a sound so alien, so utterly devoid of strategic value, that the Xylar were momentarily paralyzed. This was not the reaction they had anticipated. According to their calculations, the sonic resonators should have induced a state of placid compliance. The hydrocleansers should have eliminated any lingering pathogens. The baby should have been, if not happy, at least quiescent. Instead, it was celebrating. Krillsec 9, his optical sensors widening in disbelief, consulted his tactical database. Aggression levels? Rising? Is the specimen attempting to breach containment? The science team, equally bewildered, frantically adjusted their instruments. Sonic resonance ineffective, hydropressure nominal, lavender scent unquantifiable. The baby, oblivious to the scientific consternation it was causing, continued its aquatic revelry. It gurgled and cooed, its laughter echoing through the sterile chamber like an infectious disease. To the Xylar, a species that hadn't experienced spontaneous joy in centuries, it was nothing short of an existential threat. The situation escalated rapidly. Krillsec 9, his crest flashing a warning crimson, declared a code Omega-7, biological anomaly exhibiting uncontrolled exuberance. He slammed his tentacled fist on the emergency override. Seal the chamber, initiate containment protocols. This requires immediate counsel. The chamber doors hissed shut, trapping the laughing, splashing baby inside. The Xylar, their rigid protocols shattered, retreated to their command center, leaving the infant to its incomprehensible joy. They had faced down galactic empires, conquered treacherous nebulae, and navigated the complexities of interstellar diplomacy. But this was a foe unlike any they had ever encountered. A foe armed with nothing more than laughter. And the Xylar, for the first time in their long and storied history, were terrified. With the specimen contained, the Xylar refocused their efforts on the artifacts recovered from the escape pod. These objects, they reasoned, must hold the key to understanding the creature's purpose, its capabilities, and perhaps most importantly, its weaknesses. The pod itself was a marvel of primitive engineering. Its composition was mostly plastic, and a fibrous material they tentatively identified as cotton. Chief Science Officer Gleep Glorp 7 meticulously arranged the items on a sterile examination table. There were several folded squares of a soft, absorbent material, the diapers, as labeled by the pod's rudimentary interface. A brightly colored oblong object filled with small rattling spheres, and a smooth, bulbous device with a flexible protrusion, radiating a faint artificial sweetness. The diapers were first. Gleep Glorp 7, employing a series of intricate folding maneuvers, attempted to decipher their function. Initial scans revealed traces of various organic compounds, the analysis of which sent the science team into a frenzy of speculation. Excretory containment unit, suggested one junior scientist, or perhaps a bioweapon deployment system. Another chimed in, pointing to the faint traces of what they thought was a corrosive element, but was actually just the trace remains of digested fruit. The rattle was next. Its vibrant colors and simple design belied, in the Xylar's estimation, a far more sinister purpose. They cautiously activated the device, producing a cacophony of rattling sounds that echoed through the lab. Krillsec 9 recoiled, his sensory tentacles twitching nervously. "Sonic weapon," he declared, "capable of disrupting neural pathways and inducing euphoria." Further analysis revealed that the rattle's acoustic properties resonated at frequencies known to cause disorientation in certain aquatic life forms. The Xylar immediately classified it as a Class 4 psychoacoustic disruptor, capable of inducing mass hysteria and undermining battlefield cohesion. The babies, laughing during the bath, added credence to their hypothesis that this device created euphoria. The pacifier proved equally perplexing. Its smooth, bulbous form and vaguely suggestive shape led to a variety of uncomfortable theories among the more imaginative members of the science team. Some speculated that it was a form of psychological manipulation designed to induce a state of infantile dependence. Others believed it to be a delivery system for a potent neurotoxin. One particularly ambitious scientist suggested that the pacifier was a rudimentary form of cloaking technology, capable of masking the wearer's true intentions by projecting an aura of innocent vulnerability. The Xylar spent hours debating its potential applications in espionage and psychological warfare. The conclusions were grim. The human infant, far from being a helpless refugee, was clearly a highly sophisticated weapon, strategically deployed to sow chaos and undermine galactic stability. And these seemingly innocuous artifacts were the tools of its insidious trade. The Xylar prepared for war. The Xylar, despite their rigorous scientific methods, were utterly stumped. The baby, its strange artifacts, and its even stranger behavior, defied all logical explanation. They needed an expert, someone familiar with the baffling nuances of humanity. They needed Bob. Bob, a human translator stationed at a remote Xylar outpost, was, to put it mildly, understimulated. His primary duty was to translate trade negotiations, which usually involved the exchange of mineral rights for various shades of blue algae, a Xylar delicacy. Bob's days consisted mostly of staring at the swirling patterns of Xylar text, drinking lukewarm coffee, and contemplating the existential dread of a life lived in fluorescent lighting. When the summons came, from the Xylar High Command, Bob assumed it was another dispute over algae pigmentation. He was wrong. Very, very wrong. Escorted by two heavily armed krillsec guards, Bob was ushered into the main research facility, a vast, water-filled chamber humming with alien technology. The sight that greeted him was unusual. A dozen Xylar scientists in sterile biosuits hovered around a clear containment field, peering intently at something inside. As Bob got closer, he saw it. A human baby, gurgling happily and batting at a brightly colored mobile. Bob blinked. "Is that a baby?" he asked, stating the obvious. Chief Science Officer Gleepglorp 7 turned to him, his bioluminescent eyes flickering with a mixture of anxiety and what Bob could only describe as fear. "Translator Bob," Gleepglorp 7 said, his voice a series of modulated clicks. "We require your expertise. This biological anomaly has arrived in our sector. We believe it is significant." Bob suppressed a snort. Significant? It was a baby. He glanced at the artifacts displayed on a nearby table. Diapers, a rattle, a pacifier. The Xylar were studying them with the intensity usually reserved for analyzing black holes. "Right," Bob said, a slow grin spreading across his face. "I see. Well, this is certainly above my pay grade." He knew right then that this was going to be the most entertaining assignment he'd had in years. The absurdity of the situation was too delicious to ignore. Bob adjusted his glasses, stroking his chin with mock seriousness. All right, I'm starting to get the picture," he said, his voice dripping with false gravitas. "You see, what you've got here isn't just some biological anomaly. This, my friends, is a highly advanced weapon, a weapon of mass distraction." The Xylar scientists exchanged nervous glances, their bioluminescent eyes dimming slightly. "A weapon?" Gleepglorp 7 clicked, his vocalizations betraying a hint of skepticism. "But it is so small." "That's what they want you to think," Bob exclaimed, throwing his hands up for emphasis. "Its size is a tactical advantage. It lulls you into a false sense of security. You think, oh, it's just a baby, but then bam, uncontrollable chaos." He paused for effect, letting his words sink in. Bob leaned closer to the containment field, peering at the baby, who was now trying to shove its fist into its mouth. "You see those seemingly innocent gurgles? Those aren't just random noises. Those are coded commands, subliminal messages designed to weaken your resolve to dismantle your rigid societal structures." Gleepglorp 7 tilted his head. a gesture that Bob interpreted as Xylar for, "Are you serious?" Coded. Commands. To what end? He asked, his voice barely audible above the hum of the life support systems. Bob smiled, savoring the moment. Galactic domination, of course. What else? This baby is designed to infiltrate societies, exploit their weaknesses, and then, when they're at their most vulnerable, unleash its ultimate weapon, unconditional demands for attention. The Xylar scientists gasped, or at least, Bob assumed. That's what the sudden increase in the whirring of their life support systems meant. "Attention?" Gleepglorp 7 stammered. "But we have protocols for dealing with requests." "Oh, you sweet, naive Xylar," Bob said, shaking his head sadly. "You think your protocols can handle this? This isn't a request, it's a requirement. This thing demands constant stimulation, unwavering devotion, and an endless supply of whatever that foul-smelling substance is you found in those diapers." Bob watched with amusement as the Xylar descended into a state of near panic. He had them right where he wanted them, hook, line, and sinker. The fate of the galaxy, it seemed, now rested on his ability to convincingly portray himself as an expert on babies. This was going to be fun. As if on cue, the baby unleashed another torrent of wails, its tiny face turning an alarming shade of red. The sound echoed through the sterile lab, bouncing off the metallic walls and sending shivers down the spines of the already unnerved Xylar. Bob winced dramatically, clutching his head as if in excruciating pain. "Oh, the horror! The unspeakable horror!" he groaned, staggering back from the containment field. It's escalating. The weapon is charging." Gleepglorp 7, his usually placid face contorted with worry, turned to Bob, his voice a desperate plea. "Translator Bob, what do we do? How do we disarm it? What is the deactivation sequence?" Bob, never one to miss an opportunity for theatrical flair, pointed a trembling finger at the pacifier lying innocently on a nearby table. That is the key. The deactivation nipple. But be warned, it must be administered with extreme precision or else." He trailed off, letting the implication hang heavy in the air. "Or else what?" Gleepglorp 7 pressed, his gills fluttering rapidly. "Tell us. We must know." Bob paused for dramatic effect, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "Or else, kaboom. Complete and utter meltdown. A tantrum of such magnitude that it could shatter the very fabric of spacetime." He widened his eyes for emphasis. "We're talking galactic-level consequences." The Xylar scientists exchanged frantic glances, their bioluminescent eyes flashing in a synchronized display of panic. Gleepglorp 7 barked orders, his voice echoing through the lab. "Initiate deactivation protocol Omega. Seal off all secondary containment zones. Prepare for potential space-time shattering." Bob watched with barely concealed amusement as the Xylar scurried about, their rigid movements betraying their growing desperation. He cleared his throat, drawing their attention back to him. "All right, listen up. This is a delicate procedure. One wrong move and we're all doomed." He pointed to a complex diagram projected onto a nearby screen, a diagram that, in reality, was just a doodle he'd scribbled on a napkin earlier. "You see this pacification matrix? It's crucial that the deactivation nipple is inserted at precisely a 37.5-degree angle, with a rotational velocity of, let's say 2.7 cycles per microblorp." He made the numbers up on the spot. 37.5 degrees? Gleepglorp 7 squeaked, his tentacles trembling. "But our instruments are calibrated in gradients. How do we convert?" Bob sighed dramatically. "No time for conversions. We're improvising. Just eyeball it, and for the love of all that is holy, don't drop it." He watched as a hapless Xylar scientist chosen at random carefully picked up the pacifier with a pair of oversized tongs, his entire body shaking with nervous energy. The scientist approached the containment field, his movements slow and deliberate, as if disarming a highly volatile explosive. Bob held his breath, suppressing a giggle. This was even more ridiculous than he could have possibly imagined. The fate of the galaxy, apparently, hinged on the proper insertion of a rubber nipple. All right, settle down, you blue blobs," Bob said, clapping his hands together with mock seriousness. "We've successfully averted a space-time catastrophe, for now." He gestured dramatically toward the discarded diaper now resting in the corner of the containment field. "But there's still the matter of that." Gleep Glorp 7, still visibly shaken from the pacifier incident, turned his gaze toward the offending article. That biohazard? What is its threat level?" Bob stroked his chin, adopting a grave expression. "Oh, that's not just a biohazard, my friend. That's radioactive." The Xylar scientists gasped in unison, their bioluminescent eyes flashing with renewed alarm. "Radioactive?" Gleep Glorp 7 exclaimed, his tentacles flailing. "But how? The infant's energy signature, it registered as benign." Bob shrugged. "Infants are sneaky. They lull you into a false sense of security with their cooing and gurgling. Meanwhile, they're producing enough radioactive waste to power a small city." He paused for effect. "Or, contaminate an entire planet." The Xylar exchanged horrified glances. "Containment protocols. Initiate immediate containment protocols." Gleep Glorp 7 barked, his voice barely above a squeak. Bob held up a hand, stopping them in their tracks. "Whoa, hold on. Standard containment procedures won't cut it for this. We're talking about highly unstable, fecal matter isotopes. You need specialized disposal." "Specialized disposal?" Gleep Glorp 7 repeated, his gills fluttering nervously. "What does that entail?" Bob grinned, his mind racing with possibilities. "Well, first you'll need a hazmat team. Full biosuits, the works. Then you'll need to transport the isotope containment unit. That's the diaper, by the way, in a shielded vehicle at a speed no greater than, say, 27 kilometers per hour. 27 kilometers per hour? One of the scientists questioned. "But the nearest waste disposal facility is 3 sectors away. That will take days." Bob nodded gravely. I know. But we can't risk a breach. Any sudden movements, any jolts, and poof! Radioactive fallout. We're talking mutated space squirrels, glowing algae. The whole shebang." Gleep Glorp 7 wrung his tentacles, his face a mask of despair. But the patrol routes, the scheduled inspections. We cannot afford to divert resources for such a prolonged period." Bob shrugged, feigning indifference. "Hey, I'm just the translator. You asked me about the diaper, I told you about the diaper. If you want to risk a radioactive apocalypse, be my guest. Just don't come crying to me when the space squirrels start demanding tribute." He watched with glee as the Xylar descended into a state of utter chaos. Hazmat suits were located, a heavily armored transport vehicle was requisitioned, and a team of highly trained and thoroughly confused scientists were assigned to the arduous task of diaper disposal. As the vehicle slowly crawled out of the station, its flashing lights cutting through the sterile corridors, Bob couldn't help but chuckle. A single human baby and a slightly embellished explanation of diaper disposal had brought an entire galactic patrol to its knees. He wondered what other kinds of mischief he could get up to. The Xylar Council chamber was abuzz with nervous energy. Holographic projections flickered, displaying complex threat assessments and containment strategies, all centered on the innocent-looking human baby. Grand Overseer Floop Glorp Prime, his tentacles twitching, prepared to declare a state of emergency. "Council members," he announced, his voice booming through the chamber, "we face an unprecedented threat. This infant possesses capabilities far beyond our comprehension. I propose we initiate Code Omega, complete lockdown, and—" But before he could finish, Gleep Glorp 7, looking utterly harried, interrupted. "Grand Overseer, we are attempting to implement Translator Bob's directives. He insists we engage in soothing vocalizations and exaggerated facial gestures to pacify the entity." A ripple of confusion spread through the council. Soothing vocalizations, exaggerated facial gestures? Floop Glorp Prime sputtered. Are you suggesting we entertain the weapon? Translator Bob assures us it is crucial to preventing a total meltdown, Gleepglorp 7 stammered. He then projected a series of images. Xylar officers, their usually stern faces contorted into grotesque smiles, singing off-key melodies and waving their tentacles in a bizarre, synchronized dance. A few of the younger Xylar couldn't help but stare, their mandibles slightly agape. The sight of their usually stoic superiors acting so ridiculous was almost too much to bear. As the soothing vocalizations continued, something unexpected happened. A small giggle escaped from one of the junior officers. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible sound, but in the silence of the chamber, it was deafening. All eyes turned to the officer, who immediately recoiled in horror, his face turning an even, deeper shade of blue. Laughter was strictly forbidden within the council chambers, a sign of disrespect, of emotional instability. But then, another giggle, and another. Soon, a wave of suppressed laughter rippled through the chamber. The absurdity of the situation, the terrifying weapon that required silly songs and goofy faces, was simply too much to contain. Even Gleepglorp 7, usually the most uptight of the Xylar, found a smile creeping across his face. He tried to suppress it, but it was no use. A soft chuckle escaped his lips. Floopglorp Prime watched in stunned silence as his council descended into a fit of giggles. He had never witnessed anything like it in his centuries of service. Laughter, among the Xylar, it was unthinkable. But then, he looked at the holographic projection of his officers singing silly songs to the baby, and he saw for the first time the sheer absurdity of their rigid protocols, the stifling weight of their traditions. And despite himself, a tiny smile twitched at the corner of his mouth. He quickly suppressed it, of course, but the seed had been planted. The baby, it seemed, was not just a weapon. It was a mirror reflecting the absurdity of the Xylar's own existence. The laughter continued to build, echoing through the council chamber like a forbidden symphony. Floopglorp Prime stared at the chaos unfolding before him, his tentacles now completely still. He felt a strange sensation, a tickle in his thorax he couldn't quite identify. Could it be amusement? Then the baby gurgled, a sound far more melodic than any Xylar battle cry. It reached out a tiny hand towards one of the singing officers, its fingers grasping at the tentacle. The officer, surprised, stopped singing and looked down at the infant. A genuine smile spread across his face. Perhaps, Floopglorp Prime said, his voice barely a whisper. We have miscalculated. He paused, then corrected himself. Perhaps our calculations were incomplete. A new projection appeared, this one not showing threat assessments but the faces of the Xylar officers, softened by smiles and laughter. It showed the baby, not as a weapon, but as a small, vulnerable creature. A creature that evoked something unfamiliar. This is not a weapon, Gleepglorp 7 declared, finally understanding. It is a catalyst. A catalyst for change, for joy, for something the Xylar had long forgotten existed. The rigid structure of their society, built on protocols and procedures, began to crack ever so slightly. The Xylar had prepared for war, for galactic domination, for the cold, hard logic of the universe. But they were utterly unprepared for the illogical, messy, and strangely delightful chaos of a human baby. Some, the older and more entrenched, still clung to their rigid ways, but they were outnumbered. The younger Xylar, those who had only known the strictures of their society, felt something awaken within them, a longing for something more than efficiency and order, a desire for, well, for silliness. They began to appreciate the absurdity of the situation, the sheer joy of making goofy faces and singing off-key lullabies. The baby, with its innocent gurgles and unexpected smiles, was dismantling their entire worldview, one giggle at a time. The galaxy, or at least this small corner of it, was changing. Not through conquest or technological advancement, but through the simple, unassuming power of a human baby. And for the first time in centuries, the Xylar felt a glimmer of hope, not for domination but for something far more profound: happiness. The decision was swift, unprecedented, and utterly illogical by Xylar standards. The Xylar Patrol would be repurposed. The warships would be refitted, not for battle but for childcare. From the ashes of their militaristic ambitions rose the Xylar Nanny Corps, a specialized division dedicated to the care and well-being of the human infant. The initial recruits were those who had shown the most enthusiasm during the deactivation procedures, the ones who could pull the silliest faces and sing the most off-key lullabies. Their training was crew unconventional. Instead of combat simulations, they practiced diaper changes. Instead of weapons drills, they learned to assemble rattles. Instead of strategic planning, they studied the intricacies of baby talk. The transformation was complete. The Xylar Patrol, once the terror of the Hydron Nebula, now waddled around in custom-designed baby carriers, their tentacles gently swaying to the rhythm of lullabies. Their primary mission: to ensure the infant's happiness and prevent any further catastrophic outbursts. But the Xylar were nothing if not thorough. They applied their rigorous scientific principles to the art of childcare, leading to some interesting innovations. One of the first priorities was addressing the radioactive waste issue. The diaper disposal protocol, as Bob had outlined, was deemed far too inefficient. So the Xylar put their considerable engineering skills to work, developing self-cleaning, self-sanitizing diapers that recycled waste into nutrient paste, which, thankfully, was not fed back to the baby. They also invented a sonic soother that emitted a frequency perfectly calibrated to calm the baby's cries, though it also had the side effect of inducing a state of blissful tranquility in anyone within a 5-meter radius. Their research even extended to toys. Analyzing the rattle, they discovered the principles of resonant frequency and developed a range of educational toys that stimulated the baby's cognitive development while simultaneously harmonizing the surrounding environment. The Xylar, it turned out, were surprisingly good at baby tech. Their old militaristic goals faded into distant memory, replaced by a singular, all-consuming objective: to raise the human baby in the most optimal environment possible. Galactic domination? Irrelevant. Strategic alliances? Unnecessary. The only thing that mattered was the baby's next nap. And so the Xylar Patrol, now the Xylar Nanny Corps, embarked on their new mission, armed not with blasters, but with bottles, blankets, and an unwavering dedication to the most illogical, unpredictable, and utterly adorable force in the galaxy: a human baby. They were ready to face any challenge, any crisis, any poopy diaper. The galaxy, it seemed, was in surprisingly safe hands. Bob, meanwhile, watched the transformation from a safe distance, a smirk playing on his lips. His work here was done. He'd traded the sterile corridors of the Xylar Patrol for a transport heading towards, well, anywhere that served a decent burger. He sent a final message to the Xylar, a simple text: "Good luck, you'll need it." Then, he leaned back in his seat, closed his eyes, and chuckled. He'd always suspected that the universe had a sense of humor. He just hadn't realized it would be quite this infantile. As his transport warped away, back on the Xylar Patrol ship, the scene was one of utter, delightful chaos. Where once stood ranks of disciplined soldiers, now stood, well, ranks of disciplined soldiers wearing brightly colored baby carriers. Each carrier contained a carefully positioned plush toy, designed to stimulate the baby's senses. The Xylar, their voices a bizarre mix of guttural clicks and soothing tones, sang a lullaby, the melody surprisingly harmonious despite its unusual origins. The baby, gurgling happily, reached out and grabbed a tentacle, pulling it with surprising strength. The Xylar, without missing a beat, adjusted the baby carrier, ensuring optimal comfort. The transformation was complete. The Xylar Patrol, once a symbol of galactic military might, was now a symbol of, well, something else entirely, something softer, sillier, and infinitely more interesting. They were still explorers, still protectors, but their mission had fundamentally changed. They were no longer charting courses through nebulae, but through the uncharted territories of parenthood. They weren't defending against alien invaders, but against diaper rashes and sleep deprivation. And as they continued their patrol, their ships adorned with brightly colored mobiles, and their communication channels filled with the sounds of cooing and gurgling, they carried a silent message to the rest of the galaxy. Fear not, for we come in peace. And with a fully stocked diaper bag, the fate of the galaxy, it seemed, had been irrevocably altered. Not by a conquering army, not by a technological revolution, but by the simple, unstoppable force of a human baby. And somewhere out there, Bob was probably ordering another burger, laughing to himself about the time he single-handedly turned a militaristic alien species into the galaxy's most overqualified nannies. The universe, he decided, was a truly ridiculous place,